My name is Elena, and at 26 my heart didn't just beat. It resonated with the steady, hopeful rhythm of Oakhaven's potential revival, my cherished yet visibly struggling hometown. It was a place of once proud Victorian storefronts, now often boarded up, their vibrant paint peeling like sunburnt skin. A place where hushed anxieties about the future were a constant unwelcome guest at dinner tables. But I saw beyond the encroaching decay, beyond the quiet desperation. I envisioned Evergreen Commons, a meticulously designed, radically innovative, sustainable community project, a tapestry woven with threads of affordable eco-housing built from reclaimed local timber-thriving small businesses, powered by community-owned renewable energy grids, vibrant food-producing community gardens, nestled in reclaimed industrial spaces, and revitalized interconnected green corridors that would allow nature to breathe back into the urban fabric. It was more than just a set of ambitious blueprints. It was my soul, my academic life's work poured onto reams of recycled paper, representing years of intensive research, countless caffeine-fueled late nights, and an unwavering, almost defiant belief that I, a young woman from this very town, could help Oakhaven not just survive, but bloom again sustainably and equitably. I'd even managed through sheer persistence and a compelling pitch to secure a small but absolutely crucial seed grant from a forward-thinking foundation enough to develop the initial proposal into a fully fledged, actionable plan. But I never ever imagined that the most insidious, destructive threat to this deeply personal dream wouldn't be bureaucratic red tape or a lack of essential funding, but the chilling, calculated betrayal of my own flesh and blood, my ambitious, charming, and utterly ruthless older cousin Victor. The memory of his charming, duplicitous lies, the way he so effortlessly co-opted my vision, and the subsequent brazen theft of my life's work, still sends a shiver of profound, icy disillusionment down my spine, a constant reminder of naivety lost. Before I delve into the whole sordid, infuriating tale of how Victor, a respected, silver-tongued local councilman with a carefully cultivated image of civic virtue, systematically tried to build his burgeoning political empire upon the stolen, desecrated foundations of my painstakingly crafted vision, and how I, armed with little more than righteous anger and inconvenient truths, had to fight tooth and nail, often alone, to expose his deeply embedded deceit and reclaim not just my intellectual property, but Oakhaven's fragile chance at a truly sustainable, community-led future. I'd be incredibly grateful if you'd let me know where you're watching this from. And please, I implore you, hit that like button. If you've ever poured every ounce of your heart, your intellect, and your soul into something truly meaningful, only to have someone else, perhaps someone you trusted, implicitly try to brazenly take the credit, or even worse, corrupt your pure, heartfelt dream for their own selfish, cynical gain. Oakhaven. My Oakhaven. It wasn't just a geographical location on a map to me. It was the evocative scent of damp earth and old rain on the cracked asphalt after a sudden summer storm, the nostalgic rhythmic creak of the rusty, beloved swings in the increasingly neglected town park where I'd skinned my knees and dreamed my childhood dreams, the worried, etched lines on the familiar faces of the aging shopkeepers who were struggling valiantly but often futilely to keep their generational doors open against a tide of economic decline and youthful exodus. My ambitious project, Evergreen Commons, was conceived as a deeply personal love letter to this town, a carefully woven, intricate tapestry of cutting-edge, sustainable architecture, genuine bottom-up community engagement, and desperately needed locally rooted economic revitalization. I envisioned elegant, solar-paneled rooftops glinting intelligently in the sometimes reluctant Oakhaven sun, sophisticated rainwater harvesting systems nourishing vibrant, sprawling community vegetable gardens, and miniature urban orchards, pedestrian-friendly tree-lined streets, bustling once more with unique, locally owned businesses, and affordable, beautifully designed, energy-efficient co-housing units, built predominantly with reclaimed local materials, fostering a true sense of belonging and shared responsibility. I'd spent countless months long before I ever approached Victor, presenting my preliminary designs and concepts at small, informal community gatherings in church basements and school halls, patiently listening to concerns, meticulously refining details based on invaluable local feedback. My small but precious seed grant stretched to its absolute, almost breaking limit to create professional, compelling renderings, detailed cost-benefit analyses, and thorough environmental impact feasibility studies. This was no flight of fancy. It was a grounded, viable, community-shaped vision. My older cousin Victor Reed was, by all outward appearances, a rising charismatic star on the Oakhaven Town Council. He was impeccably dressed, silver-tongued, well-connected, and always had a perfectly articulated, plausible-sounding opinion on how to fix the town's myriad problems, though astute observers often noted that his proposed solutions, invariably involving tax breaks for developers or large-scale rezoning, seemed to disproportionately benefit his wealthy developer friends and campaign contributors more than the actual struggling residents of Oakhaven. When I, brimming with a nervous excitement that made my hands tremble, finally presented the fully developed Evergreen Commons proposal to him over lukewarm coffee at his favorite ostentatious downtown cafe, spreading my lovingly crafted blueprints and detailed projections across the gleaming mahogany table, he seemed genuinely profoundly impressed, almost moved. "Elena, this is truly remarkable," he'd exclaimed, his usually calculating eyes wide with what I so naively, desperately mistook for genuine admiration and familial pride. "Absolutely visionary. Oakhaven needs exactly this kind of bold, innovative thinking. You're a credit to the family, cuz. Let me be your champion on the council. I know all the right people. I can help you navigate the inevitable frustrating red tape cut through the bureaucracy. We'll make this happen together." My heart, foolish and trusting, soared like a captive bird suddenly released. With Victor, a respected, influential public figure, vocally backing my project, I felt for the first time that Evergreen Commons wasn't just a dream, but an achievable reality. He eagerly asked for complete copies of all my detailed plans, my in-depth research on sustainable materials and closed-loop systems, my carefully crafted community engagement strategies, my financial models, all the better to advocate effectively for it to counter any skepticism, he'd said, with a warm, reassuring, utterly convincing wink. I handed everything over, every last, meticulously crafted page, brimming with a fatal combination of familial trust and profound gratitude. For a few fleeting, hopeful weeks, Victor was the epitome of an encouraging, supportive mentor. He'd call with enthusiastic updates, suggest minor, seemingly innocuous tweaks to make it more palatable to the more conservative members of the planning board, or share anecdotes about positive preliminary discussions he was having. Then gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, the calls became less frequent, his enthusiasm more muted. My increasingly anxious emails about scheduling a formal presentation to the full council often went unanswered for days, then weeks met with vague excuses about his packed schedule. A cold, insidious sense of unease began to creep into my thoughts, a tiny, unwelcome voice whispering that something was amiss. One blustery gray Tuesday morning, the local newspaper, the Oakhaven Chronicle, landed with a thud on my doorstep, its front page dominated by a banner headline that made my blood run cold and my stomach lurch. "Councilman Victor Reed unveils bold transformative Green Vista plan to revitalize Oakhaven." My hands shook so violently I could barely unfold the paper. As I read the accompanying laudatory article, a sickening, disbelieving wave of nausea washed over me. Green Vista. Victor's supposedly groundbreaking, personally conceived project was a grotesquely diluted, cynically commercially compromised, and chillingly unmistakably familiar version of my Evergreen Commons. Key design elements. The sophisticated rainwater harvesting system. I'd spent months researching the precise orientation of the passive solar housing units for maximum energy efficiency. Even some of my unique, carefully chosen phrasing from my mission statement about fostering community interconnectedness through shared green spaces were all there, but grotesquely stripped of their ecological integrity, their social soul twisted and warped to prioritize quick profits over people, sprawling concrete parking lots over vital community gardens. The affordable community-centric co-housing, the very heart of my plan, was replaced with high-priced, generic luxury condos. The dedicated local business incubators designed to foster Oak Haven's homegrown talent were swapped out for anonymous prefabricated chain store retail spaces. He'd even brazenly, insultingly co-opted the name of my proposed Central Community Park, the vibrant green lung of Evergreen Commons, calling his pitifully small token green strip Vista Green. The fawning article, accompanied by a large, smiling photograph of Victor looking noble and visionary, lauded him as a forward-thinking, dynamic leader, the long-awaited savior Oak Haven had been desperately waiting for. My name, my years of dedicated, passionate work, my lovingly crafted Evergreen Commons, were of course nowhere to be found, erased as if they had never existed. A few agonizing weeks later, as Victor's Green Vista project was being inexplicably suspiciously fast-tracked through council approvals with unprecedented, almost unseemly ease, my own far more comprehensive, genuinely sustainable, and community-rooted Evergreen Commons proposal was formally summarily rejected by the Oak Haven Planning Board. The official reasons cited were a cruel echo of Victor's earlier feigned concerns: too idealistic, financially unviable without significant private developer buy-in, and lacking a clear, aggressive commercial focus. The remnants of my precious seed grant, already depleted by the extensive development work, were now utterly hopelessly insufficient to mount any kind of meaningful legal challenge, hire a consultant, or even properly archive my rejected, now seemingly worthless work. Victor, my supposed champion, my own flesh-and-blood cousin, hadn't just failed to support me. He had systematically, callously, and very publicly stolen my dream, my intellectual property, my professional future, and most heartbreakingly, Oak Haven's precious fragile chance for a truly green, equitable, and community-driven future, all while shamelessly positioning himself as its brilliant sole architect. The charming, smiling viper I had so trustingly welcomed into the confidence of my most cherished aspirations had struck, and the slow-acting, corrosive venom of his devastating betrayal burned deep, threatening to consume everything I held dear. The days and weeks following the callous rejection of Evergreen Commons and the triumphant, media-saturated launch of Victor's plagiarized, soul-stripped Green Vista were a disorienting, painful blur of numb disbelief, helpless, impotent anger, and a profound, isolating sense of professional and personal violation. Friends, bless their well-meaning hearts, offered awkward, hesitant condolences, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and discomfort, unsure what to say in the face of such a brazen, familial betrayal. My parents, Robert and Susan, while privately almost grudgingly expressing a muted sympathy for my understandable disappointment, quickly pivoted to urging me to be gracious, to accept the council's decision with dignity, and above all, not make waves or say anything rash that could potentially embarrass Victor, their suddenly even more successful prominent nephew, and by extension themselves. After all, they reasoned with a maddening, willful blindness, his project, flawed as it might seem to my idealistic eyes, was still bringing some much-needed greenery and vital economic development to Oak Haven, wasn't it? Their inability, or perhaps their deeply ingrained unwillingness to see, let alone acknowledge, the depth of his deceit. The theft of my intellectual labor felt like a fresh, stinging betrayal rubbing salt into an already gaping wound. I was not just grieving my project, I was grieving the family I thought I had. When I finally, after numerous unreturned calls, managed to get Victor on the phone, his voice was impossibly smooth, infuriatingly patronizing, dripping with a false saccharine sympathy that made my skin crawl. "Elena, darling, I understand you're upset, truly I do. It's a tough business. But these things happen, ideas are often just in the air, floating around. Perhaps we were just thinking along very similar convergent lines. It's a testament to a good concept. Really, Green Vista, you see, is what Oak Haven needs right now. It's practical, it's achievable, it's eminently fundable. Your little project, bless your passionate heart, was sweet, truly charming, but it was never realistically going to fly, not in the current economic climate." He expertly gaslighted me, casually dismissed my meticulously documented years of unique, innovative work as a mere coincidental similarity of vision, and skillfully painted me as a naive, overly emotional, unprofessional amateur incapable of understanding the hard realities of development. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling so violently it clattered against the receiver, shaking with a righteous incandescent rage so potent it almost choked the air from my lungs. But rage, I soon painfully realized, however justified, wouldn't reclaim my stolen work, restore my professional reputation, or save Oakhaven from Victor's cynical, profit-driven, and environmentally compromised caricature of my beautiful, holistic vision. I had to fight back not with emotion but with cold, hard, undeniable facts. I began to systematically, obsessively scrutinize every publicly available document, every minute of council meetings, every revised blueprint related to Green Vista. The more I delved into the bureaucratic labyrinth, the more alarmed and disgusted I became. The much-vaunted, expansive green spaces in his glossy promotional brochures were, upon closer inspection of the actual site plan, significantly smaller, often awkwardly shaped and unusable than in my original carefully integrated proposal, frequently relegated to token overlooked slivers of land between towering condo blocks or alongside noisy thoroughfares. The cutting-edge sustainable materials he'd boasted about so proudly in press releases were in the revised and quietly submitted construction filings, being systematically replaced with cheaper conventional and far less eco-friendly alternatives. Most damningly, the officially released list of approved primary contractors and subcontractors for the multi-million-dollar Green Vista project was riddled with the names of companies known throughout Oakhaven to be Victor's closest political associates, his most generous campaign donors, and in a few particularly egregious cases businesses with very questionable, well-documented environmental track records and a history of shoddy workmanship. This wasn't just a simple case of plagiarism anymore. It was rapidly shaping up to be a potential vehicle for rampant cronyism, blatant self-enrichment, and significant, unforgivable environmental corner-cutting. My unexpected salvation. The first glimmer of hope in a very dark tunnel came in an unexpected academic form. My old university mentor, Professor Alistair Armitage, a semi-retired but fiercely principled and nationally respected urban planner with an unshakable moral compass, had seen the gushing newspaper article about Green Vista, and knowing my years of dedicated, passionate work on sustainable Oakhaven designs from my thesis and postgraduate studies, had immediately, as he later put it, smelled a very large, politically connected rat. He called me out of the blue, his familiar, booming voice crackling with a comforting mix of indignation on my behalf and scholarly outrage. "Elena, my dear girl," he declared, his voice radiating conviction, "that unmitigated scoundrel of a cousin of yours hasn't just stolen your brilliant ideas. He's comprehensively butchered them, turned your silk purse into a sow's ear. This is an outrage, not just against intellectual property, but against the very principles of sustainable ethical development. We simply must expose this charlatan." His unwavering, unquestioning belief in me, his righteous, articulate anger was the lifeline, the intellectual and moral anchor I so desperately, profoundly needed. Together, often working late into the night in his dusty book-lined study, we began to meticulously, forensically cross-reference Victor's publicly filed Green Vista plans against my dated, time-stamped, and digitally watermarked Evergreen Commons blueprints, painstakingly highlighting every stolen concept, every replicated design feature, every compromised ideal, every broken promise. Professor Armitage, with his extensive network, also connected me with Sarah Jenkins, a tenacious, fiercely intelligent, and notoriously underpaid investigative journalist for a small, fiercely independent online news outlet, the Oakhaven Sentinel, which had a reputation for being unafraid to challenge Oakhaven's cozy, often complacent political establishment. Sarah, a woman whose sharp eyes missed nothing, was initially understandably skeptical, thoroughly used to dealing with disgruntled cranks, local conspiracy theories, and minor political squabbles. But as I, with Professor Armitage's calm, authoritative support, carefully, methodically laid out my meticulously gathered evidence, the clearly dated original design documents, the specific email exchanges, where Victor had effusively praised my most unique innovations mere weeks before brazenly claiming them as his own, the increasingly dubious and environmentally damaging changes being made to Green Vista's public filings under the guise of value engineering, her eyes initially narrowed with professional caution, began to light up with the unmistakable fervor of a journalist scenting a genuinely significant, impactful story. "This is far more than just a stolen student idea, Elena," she said at the end of our second-long meeting, her pen flying furiously across her notepad. "This stinks to high heaven of potential corruption conflicts of interest and a cynical betrayal of public trust. This could be big." As Sarah, with her characteristic tenacity, started asking pointed, uncomfortable questions around town, digging into council records and filing Freedom of Information requests that clearly targeted Victor's dealings, he must have realized he was no longer dealing with just his emotional, naive little cousin. The atmosphere shifted. Subtle, then not-so-subtle warnings began to reach me through concerned, well-meaning, or perhaps not-so-well-meaning family members. "Victor's very upset that you're making such a public fuss, Elena. He says you're damaging his reputation. You wouldn't want to damage your own future prospects in this small town. Would you, dear?" Then a far more direct, unambiguous threat. A sleek, cream-colored envelope arrived by courier containing a carefully, coldly worded legal letter from Victor's notoriously aggressive, high-powered city lawyer. It accused me in no uncertain terms of defamation slander and a malicious attempt to undermine a vital public project, threatening immediate, costly, and reputation-destroying legal action if I didn't publicly retract my false and damaging allegations and cease and desist my malicious campaign at once. For a terrifying, stomach-churning week, I almost buckled under the weight of it. The thought of a protracted, ugly legal battle against Victor with his vast resources, his entrenched political connections, and his utter ruthlessness was almost overwhelming. I barely slept, haunted by visions of financial ruin and public disgrace. But then, in the depths of my despair, I looked at the faded, cherished photograph of Grandma Rosie's kind, smiling face on my cluttered desk. I thought of the compromised, unsustainable future Victor was so callously preparing for Oakhaven, and Professor Armitage's steadying, resonant words echoed in my ears. "Truth, Elena, is the most sustainable, most resilient material of all. It always endures." The fight for truth for Oakhaven's trees, for its very soul, was far from over. It was, I realized, with a surge of renewed, if fearful, determination just truly beginning. The menacing legal threat, cynically designed to crush my spirit and silence my dissent, instead acted as a powerful, unexpected catalyst, forging an even stronger, more resolute bond within our small, determined team. Professor Armitage, with his decades of academic and practical experience, helped me find a sharp, principled pro bono environmental lawyer who, after reviewing Victor's blustering bullying letter, actually scoffed with derision, declaring it all bark and no bite, a classic slap-suit tactic. And Sarah Jenkins, far from being intimidated by the veiled threats against her source, saw Victor's aggressive legal maneuvering as definitive confirmation that she was indeed onto a very big, very significant story, one that clearly had powerful people running scared. We had the unshakable truth on our side, a growing mountain of meticulously documented evidence, and now we had a carefully crafted, multi-pronged plan to make that truth heard not just by a select few insiders, but by every single resident of Oakhaven. Sarah decided the most impactful approach would be a meticulously researched, hard-hitting, multi-part investigative series for her burgeoning online news platform, the Oakhaven Sentinel. This series would systematically lay bare the entire deceitful saga, culminating in a widely publicized public presentation of our comprehensive findings, strategically timed just days before the Oakhaven Town Council's final, absolutely crucial vote on Green Vista's most lucrative and most environmentally questionable zoning variances. The weeks leading up to the launch of Sarah's exposé were a maelstrom of intense, often clandestine activity, fueled by adrenaline-black coffee and a shared sense of urgent purpose. There were covert meetings in hushed library corners and late-night sessions in Professor Armitage's attic study, sifting through yet more documents, cross-referencing facts, and preparing visual aids. There were also moments of profound, heart-stopping anxiety, the constant gnawing fear of Victor discovering our carefully laid plan and finding some way to preemptively discredit us or shut us down. But our resolve held. We managed to uncover even more damning, irrefutable evidence: internal council emails leaked by a conscience-stricken junior staffer from Victor to his network of crony contractors, explicitly discussing ways to creatively interpret or entirely circumvent crucial environmental regulations for Green Vista to cut costs and expedite timelines, altered, backdated engineering reports that deliberately dangerously downplayed significant flood risks in the proposed primary construction zone, and even a courageous anonymous whistleblower from within the normally tight-lipped Oak Haven Planning Department who provided detailed corroborated testimony about the intense, often bullying pressure Victor had personally exerted on staff to fast-track his flawed project and summarily dismiss any legitimate professionally raised concerns about its long-term environmental impact and its striking, undeniable resemblance to my previously submitted, then rejected Evergreen Commons proposal. Each new piece of meticulously verified evidence felt like another heavy, well-aimed nail being driven into the ornate, gilded coffin of Victor's carefully constructed, entirely false public facade. The day Sarah's first explosive article dropped online, dramatically titled Oak Haven's Green Dream or Councilman Reed's Greenwash Scheme, it sent immediate, palpable shockwaves reverberating through the normally placid town. Her meticulously researched piece, devoid of sensationalism, but packed with verifiable facts laid out with cold, stark clarity, the undeniable, almost blueprint-level parallels between my thoroughly documented Evergreen Commons and Victor's hastily assembled Green Vista, powerfully backed by side-by-side comparisons of dated architectural drawings, expert testimony from the unimpeachable Professor Armitage, and quotes from national sustainability experts who reviewed both plans. The article went on to rigorously question the sudden, unexplained shift to cheaper, less sustainable materials in Green Vista's later filings, the inexplicable shrinking of its promised public green spaces, and the deeply opaque, almost secretive bidding process for its lucrative primary construction contracts. Phones started ringing all over Oak Haven. Local environmental groups, previously unaware of the true depth and scale of the issues, immediately pledged their vocal, active support for our cause. Concerned ordinary citizens feeling betrayed and misled began asking sharp, uncomfortable questions at Victor's increasingly tense, carefully stage-managed press conferences. The carefully polished veneer of Victor's civic virtue began to crack visibly. By the time the final, most damning article in Sarah's investigative series was published, this one detailing the concrete evidence of potential corruption, serious conflicts of interest, and willful environmental negligence, public sentiment in Oak Haven had decisively, irreversibly turned against Victor and his compromised Green Vista project. The normally staid, sparsely attended Oak Haven Town Hall meeting, where the final crucial zoning vote for Green Vista was scheduled, was packed to the absolute rafters, the atmosphere electric with anticipation and outrage. It wasn't just Victor's usual phalanx of well-heeled supporters and nervous-looking business associates in attendance. The hall was overflowing with angry, disillusioned residents, determined environmental activists holding pointed homemade placards, "Our town, our trees, not Victor's fees," and a significant buzzing contingent of regional media, all drawn by the compelling, unfolding drama of Sarah's powerful investigation. Victor, visibly flustered, his usual suave composure beginning to fray at the edges, attempted to dismiss the now viral articles with a forced, unconvincing laugh, labeling them as sensationalist yellow journalism fueled by sour grapes and malicious personal vendettas. But then Sarah Jenkins, formally invited by a newly emboldened reform-minded council member to present her documented findings to the Assembly, calmly, methodically, and devastatingly laid out the entire intricate web of evidence. She detailed the plagiarism, the cronyism, the environmental endangerment, projecting my original, clearly dated Evergreen Commons blueprints alongside Victor's later suspiciously, almost comically similar plans on a large screen for all in the hushed hall to see with their own eyes. She presented the altered engineering reports, the damning email excerpts, the financial trails. The silence in the vast hall was absolute, thick with disbelief and dawning anger. Then came the questions, sharp, relentless, and unforgiving, not just from a few brave council members, but from ordinary, everyday residents, their voices filled with a newfound sense of empowerment and righteous indignation. It was then, under the harsh, unblinking, fluorescent lights of the Oak Haven Town Hall, under the collective accusing gaze of his own community, that Victor's face and the faces of his increasingly uncomfortable allied council members and ashen-looking contractor cronies clustered in the front rows truly, unforgettably went pale. The healthy, confident color drained completely from his usually ruddy, self-satisfied complexion, replaced by a sickly, greenish, almost translucent hue. His practiced, charming smile faltered, then collapsed entirely, replaced by an unattractive telltale twitching near his left eye. He stammered, he blustered, he attempted to deflect and deny, but his usual oily charm, his well-honed rhetorical tricks failed him utterly spectacularly in the face of the cold, hard, irrefutable, and now very publicly displayed evidence of his profound, multifaceted deceit. The crucial vote on the Green Vista zoning variances was not just rejected, it was overwhelmingly, resoundingly, almost jubilantly defeated. The Green Vista project as it stood was well and truly dead in the water. In the tumultuous following weeks, Victor faced a humiliating, publicly damaging official ethics investigation by the town council, from which he eventually unceremoniously resigned in disgrace, and a separate, far more serious inquiry from the state's Environmental Protection Agency regarding potential fraud and environmental violations. His once bright political career was in tatters, his carefully cultivated reputation as Oakhaven's savior utterly, irrevocably ruined. The sweetest, most profound victory I discovered wasn't just witnessing Victor's public ignominious downfall, though the deep cleansing sense of vindication of justice finally served after so much pain and struggle was undeniably, incredibly potent. It was what happened next. The town of Oakhaven, now fully painfully aware of my original holistic and community-centered vision for Evergreen Commons, began to rally with an energy and enthusiasm that brought tears to my eyes. Grassroots community organizations, energized and empowered by our collective success in halting Green Vista, formed almost overnight, passionately demanding a transparent, fair, and immediate review of my original project. The Oakhaven Planning Board, now under intense, unblinking public scrutiny, and with several of Victor's former allies either disgraced, hastily distancing themselves, or quietly resigning sheepishly, but unanimously agreed to reconsider Evergreen Commons with fresh eyes and an open mind. It wouldn't be an easy path forward. Funding, as always, remained a significant hurdle, especially now that the town's budget was also under scrutiny. But then something truly magical began to happen. Local businesses, inspired by the story of our fight for integrity, community groups who had long dreamed of such a project, and even small, ethical local investors impressed by the resilience and inherent viability of Evergreen Commons, began to step forward, offering pro bono support, skilled expertise, donations of materials, and crucial seed capital. We started small, but with immense heart and community backing, with a vibrant, beautifully executed pilot program for the interconnected community gardens, and a stunning demonstration eco-home built entirely with local, sustainable, and reclaimed materials, exactly as I had originally passionately envisioned all those years ago. It was a slow, deliberate, organic process, built literally from the ground up with the active, enthusiastic participation of the community for the ultimate long-term benefit of the community. My name, once whispered dismissively in connection with naive idealism, or worse, Victor's manufactured malicious controversy, was now spoken with respect, admiration, and affection, becoming synonymous with integrity, resilience, innovative thinking, and a genuine, unwavering commitment to Oakhaven's brighter, greener, more equitable future. My parents, after a long, painful period of stunned, ashamed silence and deep introspection, finally humbly approached me, their carefully prepared apologies, heartfelt, their profound regret etched deeply on their faces. "We were utter fools, Elena," my father admitted, his voice thick with an emotion I had never heard from him before, genuine remorse. Completely blinded by Victor's superficial flash, his empty promises, and far too quick, too arrogant to dismiss our own daughter's incredible vision. Rebuilding that shattered trust, I knew, would take time, a very long time, and a tremendous amount of consistent effort on their part. But for the very first time since the nightmare began, as I looked into their genuinely humbled eyes, I felt a tiny, fragile flicker of hope that it might one distant day be truly possible. Today, as I walk through the burgeoning, joyfully tended community gardens of the Evergreen Commons pilot site, now expanding phase by phase, seeing children laugh as they learn about the magic of composting, watching neighbors share an abundance of freshly picked organic vegetables, and listening to the hopeful plans for the new solar-powered library and community kitchen, I know, with a certainty that settles deep in my bones, that this is the true lasting victory. It's not just about designing and building sustainable, beautiful buildings. It's about nurturing and building a resilient, connected, empowered, and hopeful community from the ground up. Victor, in his greed and arrogance, tried to steal my blueprint, my intellectual labor, but he could never ever steal my core vision, my unshakable passion, or my unwavering, fierce belief in a better, more just future for Oakhaven. And that powerful, life-affirming realization I've learned through this arduous, transformative journey is a foundation no amount of cynical greed, political deceit, or personal betrayal can ever truly permanently undermine. Have you ever had a cherished vision for your community, a project you deeply passionately believed in, only to face unexpected, heartbreaking obstacles or devastating betrayals from those you thought you could trust? How did you find the inner strength, the resilience, the sheer grit to keep fighting for what you knew in your heart was right and true? Share your inspiring, powerful stories of perseverance, courage, and community spirit in the comments below. And please, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more compelling stories about turning profound setbacks into inspiring, life-changing comebacks. Remember, sometimes the most powerful, enduring blueprints are not those meticulously drawn on paper, but those courageously etched in unwavering integrity, unshakable hope, and an unyielding, fierce love for what truly deeply matters. Thank you from the very bottom of my heart for joining me on this challenging, often painful, but ultimately exhilarating journey to help build a greener, more just, and more hopeful Oakhaven.